Oh, we're not in here.
So I guess you want to ask people to move their chairs. Do you want me to do that?
Oh,
All right, guys, we're gonna get started. If you want to shift around, I think we have the noisiest chairs. My name is Jillian Deach. I'm the upper school counselor. And
hi. And I'm Kate Edelin, the middle school counselor.
Bridget McGuire, the lower school counselor.
so we're all in our undergrad college shirts today. It's college announcement day across the country. So all of our seniors will probably be dressed up. I haven't been over to the upper school yet today, but they should all be dressed up in where they've decided to go to college or what they're planning on doing next year. So we're all representing, and I was like, we're all in red.
There's so much red today. So many schools have red.
But so today we're gonna do, we thought maybe everyone would introduce themselves really quickly and then just say what your favorite grade was when you were in school. And then I'm gonna talk a little bit about this year with the upper school programming that we did and what we're looking forward to for next year. And then also just some tips for upper schoolers for the summer and how they can make the most of it when it comes to social emotional learning and just feeling good and ready for the next year to start. So if you don't mind, if we could just start here, we could just
Sure. I'm Chris Pretty. I've got two kiddos. I've got Maddie, who is in first grade in Miss Davis's class, and I've got Foster, who's in Miss Combs' class in the third grade. My favorite grade was probably junior high school.
I'm Patricia Dolson, and I have one child here, Asa, who's a first grader in Miss G's class. And my favorite grade was actually also my junior year.
Gary Friedman, a sophomore in 8th grade, two boys. Clearly my favorite year was being a senior.
I'm Karen. I've got a kindergartner and a third grader, and I think my favorite year would have been 8th grade, actually.
Okay.
I'm Mindy Arndt. I have a first grader with Miss Davis, and it's either between first grade or junior year. I remember
The
first
gamut.
grade a lot.
There's similarities.
Right.
Somehow.
Okay, we'll go to the back table.
I'm Maggie Griesbeck. I've got a first grader and a kindergartner. And what my favorite year?
Yeah, what your favorite year?
Maybe 8th grade.
Okay.
I'm Stephanie. I have a third grader and a 6th grader here. And I actually really, really liked both third grade and 6th grade. Good teachers, good.
I'm Sydney. I've got a freshman. I like third grade.
Great.
Brian Holzer, 4, 6, 9, and senior year of high school.
Lucy Holzer, same grade, so one in each division. And I don't know that I had a favorite grade. I just kind of just a big jumble in my head.
Stephanie Disney, I'm a junior, and I would say 8th grade.
We'll go to the back table.
And I was late, so I'm going to say instructions for favorite for our child.
For yourself. Your favorite grade? Not to put you on the spot.
Okay, so I have a 6th grader, Hugh Johnson. My son is CJ Scott. And I would say for myself, just senior year of high school.
Hey, I'm Hunter. I have a 9th, 6th, and 4th grader. And for me, probably junior year.
Hi, I'm Rachel Rowland. I've got a 7th grader and 2 5th graders. And my favorite year was junior year too.
Michael Watkins, my son Leo is in the 6th grade. It's a tough question. For now, I'm gonna go with either 6th or 7th grade.
Hi, I'm Miranda Reed. Alden is in 5th grade, and our son is in 2nd, and I'll say senior year.
Right? We didn't say. I would say probably sophomore year, I think, of high school was really good for me. I also have a 5th grader and a 7th grader. So, okay, so I took some notes to remind myself.
I want to say,
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
my favorite year, I was trying to think, like, when was I the most fun? I was like, oh, I was in charge of the yearbook. That's like how fun I was. That's so sad. But that was senior year. That was fun. And I have a JK son here at Collegiate.
I have two kids. I have an 8th grader and a junior. I think 4th grade. I loved my 4th grade teacher, so I'm gonna go with 4th grade.
I'm pleased to hear some of you said middle school a little bit.
I know, so 8th grade.
A black hole for most adults and humans. So that's awesome. Yeah. Hey, sorry. Okay.
Yeah, so the upper school, we had so many amazing things I think that we did this year, and this year has gone so fast. This is my 2nd year at Collegiate. I can't believe that we're in May. It's crazy. But last night I took some notes because I was like, I don't know if I'll remember everything that we did and everything that the kids did. So it was a big year for us for social emotional learning and applied health. We started the year, Kate, Bridget, and I, we started the year by training all of our teachers in QPR, which is a suicide prevention program. So we felt really good about that and supporting our teachers. And I also did that with, I think Kate and I did that with our seniors this year. So they did a suicide prevention program. It's a research-based program that helps everyone to be, it's kind of meant to be like CPR, so that everyone has the skills to be able to talk to people and get support for people.
We opened that up to coaches too. So we did a couple of training sessions with coaches that were able to come.
Yep. Okay, so 9th grade, we started with a new program called Wellness Foundations. It's an applied health program, and so students took classes in body image. They took classes on mental health, substance use prevention, and also healthy relationships and sexuality education. So this was a new program. We had some experts come in. We had some counseling interns that worked with them, and I also taught some of the classes. And our PE teachers participated, so that was really great. It's part of during the LFW block, which is the Lifetime Fitness and Wellness block, so with the PE block. We also did the English department and the counseling department did a program together on compassion and empathy and conflict resolution with our 9th graders. So working with them to teach them about, what is the difference between compassion, empathy, and sympathy, and also what is important when you're in conflict or you have conflict, how to go about that in a positive way. And so that can be productive, but also not, as the kids would say, toxic, right? I don't usually use that word, but that's what they use. And we talked a little bit about conflict resolution through phones, right? What that actually looks like. Because when I was in school, it was conflict resolution in person or on the phone, but also like how to manage conflict resolution through text messages, through social media. So that was our 9th graders. The whole school started the year, we did prevention solutions, which was, you guys did that in the middle school too.
7th and 8th.
7th and 8th grade, and then all the upper school students, and that was a substance use prevention program about understanding norms and expectations when it comes to substance use. We also had a parent program. Did anyone come to the parent program for that? Yeah, we had a parent program for that. We'll do that again next year. It's something that we've been repeating. This is our 3rd year doing it, so it's been a positive experience. And we did a sleep challenge, which was tough. The kids would take notes on how they were sleeping, what they were doing, what that looked like. We gave them tips and tricks. They gave us feedback on what sometimes our schedule, on how our schedule is challenging for their sleep. We talked about that as a group, and we'll continue to do that every year so that we can really get some insight and try to troubleshoot some of the areas that are challenging. With our 10th graders, so I teach a 10th grade co-ed, and Jim McGuire also teaches a 10th grade co-ed that's focused on mental health and social emotional learning. So this year we did something called Mind Matters, which is a program with U of L, and it focuses on resiliency. So it has a lot of self-soothing techniques. It has understanding emotions and thoughts, goal setting, planning. It really covers like 10 lessons on how to really set yourself up for success and wellness in regards to your mental health. It's a trauma-informed, research-based program, and so all of our 10th graders either are currently going through it or have gone through it. And then also the 10th graders did, all of our students from 9 through 12 took healthy relationships and sexuality education class this year. It was something that wasn't available during COVID, and so we tried to get all of the grades this year. We had somebody come in, Taylor Ewing, she's an expert in sexuality education for middle and high school students, so she came and worked with our students. I sat in most of the classes and I learned so much this year. I mean, I really did. I was like always texting Bridget and Kate all the stuff that I learned. And it was really interesting to see what the kids knew and what they didn't know. And I loved that they gave us such great feedback. The students were amazing. They would tell us, that it was really nice to have like a fact check, even when they knew something, they weren't sure like what was actually true, and to have someone who's an expert and does this every day really be able to answer their questions or give them resources so they can look further into it.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
I'm so sorry to interrupt. I'm fascinated. So is there a way, could you give us, I'm curious, like an example of something that was like a potential sort of clarification?
For the kids?
Yeah.
It really depended on the grade. So like the 9th graders, a lot of the anatomy and physiology, they didn't really know how it works.
Makes sense.
Yeah, they didn't know. So we did 9th graders did 6 classes. Yeah, the 9th graders did 6 classes. And the upper school students did, the 10th and 11th graders took it together. And they took 4 classes and the seniors took 3 classes. So I didn't participate in the senior class, so I didn't know what they knew, but they had questions about like preventing STIs and STDs that they weren't sure of, things that they had heard work.
So interesting.
And yeah, so it was really, really interesting.
That's great that they were open to that.
Yeah, they were really good. And I think it was because we brought someone from the outside too, that they felt a little bit less nervous about it, especially in the high school. So yeah, it was really, really great. And we provided information for parents. We had like a doc that they could see some of the topics that we were, all of the topics that we were covering, and like parent questions and parent resources. We also did a parent night. Did anyone come to the parent night? It was like maybe middle school, high school. We didn't have a ton of people, but if we do it next year, I highly recommend it. I think it was really, really great, and our person that we have come in, she just knows like everything. We actually had 3 high school students also volunteer to become teen council educators. So they actually got trained to be sexuality educators for teenagers. And one of our seniors who had been trained previously, she did some of the classes for the 9th graders. She would come, which was like amazing because the kids, she could answer the questions with a total calm, straight face. Yeah. And that really taught the younger kids, like, this is okay to ask questions. It's totally normal to talk about this. It's not embarrassing. And that was huge, right? It's great. So that was those classes with the 10th, 11th grades did it together. The seniors, so we did QPR, we did fentanyl training with them. All of our leadership team teachers had taken training on fentanyl, and we just thought it might be something that would be really useful for our students that are going off into college, going off into the world. It's been in the news so much. So all of our seniors did that as part of their college transition class, along with the QPR and their healthy relationships and sexuality education. So their class was different. Their healthy relationships class was a little different. The 9th graders was a little different than the 10th and 11th took it together. Okay. So next year, we're looking at doing 4 quarters of Wellness Foundations, as we did 3 quarters this year. So we're looking to do 6 classes on substance use prevention with 7 counties. We're looking to do a mental health class, 6 different classes. I'll teach some of that, and we'll have some outside people teach as well. We'll do 6 classes on body image and compassion, and we'll do, let's see what I'm missing. 6 classes on, the healthy relationships class. We are also going to do, next year, it's going to be a new program. It's going to be 9th grade, kind of 101. We haven't come up with a catchy title yet, but it's going to be a mix between community building classes and supporting, and also like what you need to do in high school to be successful, whether it's with your friends or, academically, how to study for tests, how to navigate the upper school, how to use the different time periods as you have a little more independence with students who went to middle school here or the new kids, and how to really bond them together. And then also through the EE Ford grant, we're going to be doing retreats with all of the different grades, 9 through 12. We're going to be doing, it looks like we're doing 3 programs in August at the Earth and Spirit Center on team bonding and compassion. So that is our upper school. Oh, one more thing. The kids have been so amazing about mental health and SEL. A lot of our capstones this year, does anyone have it? Nobody has a senior, right? Okay, so a lot of our seniors do something called capstone. It's like a final project that they do before graduation. It's presented at the year. And I think 10 of the students picked mental health or SEL related topics to focus on. So we can see like the strength of that they get, that it's part of our community and that they're really presenting it. We also have had a student get training and start a program called Be Strong, which is a mental health program. It involves like supporting students through lunch periods, but also looking at programming and training for all of our students, and that's a student-led program that we're going to see grow next year. And then in the upper school, I know, and it might be the whole entire school, the teachers are going to be trained in mental health first aid programming throughout the year next year. And it's a day-long, I think it's like a 5-hour training program to be able to support students navigate mental health. And really the focus with mental health from our perspective is that mental health is really for everybody. And it's not just when you have a challenge with mental health, but really building up your mental health as like a core competency for you as you move forward in life. So that's the upper school. It's a lot.
Questions?
Yeah. So this isn't a question, it's a comment for you to hear. I know someone who is a child and family counselor in the area, and she was talking broadly about things that she sees or doesn't see amongst children from various schools. And she said, I have to say that I'm hearing less and less about substance use and abuse situations from the students at Collegiate. So she said she really applauds the school's efforts to address issues like that and to try to steer kids away from alcohol and drugs. It seems to be having an effect.
I mean, we've learned so much in the last, 10, 15 years just on how delaying the use of any substances makes a huge difference because their brains are still developing and it can change your neural pathways if you use substances earlier. So we're really trying to teach the kids the science of it as well as kind of the cultural piece of it, and sometimes that's a challenge. Yeah. We're doing our best.
Well, so it's coming through at least from someone, this is the comment from someone from the outside of the school who sees a lot of kids from a lot of different schools. So thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't want to monopolize the high school because I know there's, so it might be later, but the age group of 16 and up is, I'm sure you guys are aware, is research shows is the loneliest age group in America. Are you hearing any of that in the high school, or is there any kind of, I don't even know how to ask the question other than, are you seeing that at all, or is there to address that, or?
Yeah, I think one of the challenges, I think this is everywhere, I don't think it's just collegiate, but I think we do experience a little bit of it, is it's like a different kind of loneliness than what we perceive. They have friends, but they sometimes feel, and this is everywhere in that age group, they don't feel like a deep connection with those friends, or a trust, or a complete support, right? They feel they have struggle being vulnerable, with that friend group. And I think COVID is going to exacerbate that a little bit because especially the kids who missed middle school, where you're kind of get through the muck of it a little bit of like how to be a compassionate and good friend. And so we are really, trying to focus on compassion and empathy and like what that looks like to build connection. Because that is something that is so important. It's more important than just like having somebody to sit with at lunch. We're not seeing a lot of people not having people, but it's that deep, like, I trust you, I know that you'll be there for me and that you're not gonna do anything to hurt me. Or at least if you did, it's unintentional and we can talk about it.
I would also add that I think there's a lot of research now, and we've all probably read it, coming out just about social media and technology putting a divider in relationships and contributing greatly, I think, to that sense of loneliness. So I think it's both kids feeling this a little bit of disconnection, and then we have this driver that's kind of coming in between kids and their in-person healthy relationships. So I think with that research, at least I'm hearing from lower school parents that parents are just being more intentional, I think, and thoughtful about social media and when it comes into play and phone use and technology and how that is contributing to relationships. So I do think that I would feel like we'd be remiss if we didn't kind of note that piece of it.
Yeah, definitely.
Increase in use over COVID, obviously. And then, I think there's maybe a bit of because now we're sort of out of COVID and there's a lot more in-person things happening. I'm hoping it swings back a little bit, but I do think that's a contributing force.
Yeah, they have trouble having like deeper conversations with each other in person, right? They sometimes feel safer to do it on the phone, but we've talked about it with our ninth graders, like the difference in inflection in voice and how that's really hard to read on the phone. Even if you do all the emojis and the exclamation points, it still can come across really differently. So part of the retreats is to kind of address that and try to really build community and connection. And the Be Strong program that the students started has a real focus on, kind of bringing everybody together. And that new ninth grade orientation, our goal is to really start focusing on building real connections for the kids.
Maggie, did you have a question?
Yeah. And this is just because mine are so little, but what is the rule on phone usage in general when kids get bigger? Do they have them on at school? Do they bring them? What is collegiate policy on that?
So do you guys want to talk about, in lower school is that they can't have it. If they bring it, it stays in their backpack. Or if it's a watch that can turn off. But then I know it changes as they get older.
Yeah, middle school, they can bring a phone to school, but they leave it in their advisor's room all day. Sometimes they have to have it for a special art class, but then they have to get permission from the teacher. The biggest problem we're seeing right now is watches. Because every morning advisors are supposed to say, put your watch, if you have a smartwatch, in school mode. And then we get emails from parents, or parents call saying, my child texted me. It's like, well, they're not supposed to text you during the day. So watches are the biggest problem we're seeing right now, but they're not supposed to have any technology during the day except for their Chromebooks.
I mean, upper school kids can have them. During class time, they put them up in the front of the room during class time, but they can have them in between lunch. And a lot of times they use them for things in class. So it's really different between the divisions. Yeah.
I just had a quick comment about the met a speaker, and I think she was from the Hazelton.
Yeah, that's Prevention Solutions.
She was so interesting.
She was amazing.
Yeah, she was wonderful. Will you continue to have them come?
Yeah, that's the Prevention Solutions that we've had the last 2 years. We'll have them again next year.
And they work with the upper school students also?
And the middle school.
Yeah, she is excellent. We've had that particular speaker from Hazelton come twice, and the kids really connect with her. And then she's excellent with the parents too.
Even from a sixth grader parent perspective, I felt like I got a lot.
Yeah,
That's helpful.
go ahead. You can go ahead.
So I appreciate that you kind of laid out kind of what you're going to try to offer next year.
Yeah.
What I didn't hear in there, and this is not a criticism, but I'd like to ask if you would consider doing this for a variety of reasons. And I'm going to be long-winded, sorry, keep it brief. I didn't hear anything really about how to deal with violence, particularly recently as it's been displayed in gun violence. It used to be racial, it still is racial, of course, but it's also now seems to be geared towards young people, whether they're in a driveway or parking lot or somebody's front door, much less at school. Kate, maybe this is something that you can address. My son's in middle school, and he's at that age where he really is starting to get a clue as to what the rest of the world is like. As it's opening up, he's reading current events. He's hearing things through TikTok or reading things through TikTok. And I know you've offered some counseling kind of on an ad hoc basis when something happens. What I'm trying to get at is there a way to help kids understand and address their emotional health more in a proactive way? You know, they're understanding that they're starting to live in a more violent world than they've been used to in elementary school or as young kids. What can they do or what can they learn to kind of deal with, from their perspective, the prevalence of violence that may in fact be kind of oriented towards young people at this time?
I know in the upper school, some of the Mind Matters work that we did with the 10th graders, that is trauma informed, and it does involve talking about trauma, is societal trauma, personal trauma, and how to, you know, regulate emotions, but also how to do some trauma containment. And I think that while it's not robust in addressing, you know, the violence that, you know, young people are experiencing or learning about, it is meant for communities that have experienced violence. And so, yeah, there's definitely room for growth with that, absolutely. But that is something that is in that direction.
The word proactive made me think of this program that we I think are almost going to buy, going to Jim's, yay? Okay. We learned about a program called the Social Institute that is an amazing program that has lessons that can be taught by any teacher. A lot of the programs that are, you know, offered or advertised, like here you buy it and you teach it. But this program that we learned about is like continuously updated with the latest events. And then a lesson comes out that is interactive with technology. So it's kind of hard to explain, except there's a small committee of us that researched it and looked at it and talked to a couple other schools and applied for a grant through the E Ford money that the school got to implement this next year. And Jim's nodding in the back because that means like, yes, Kate, we can have the money. But it makes me really excited to address proactively situations like this, which, if it's okay, leads me right into talking about the middle school kind of SEL. You use the word muck to describe middle school, which is just like, you know, every day I come and I'm like, oh, these kids in 5 through 8, like it is just hard. It's hard to be a human at this time. And it's hard because of, I mean, imagine the difference between you're being like 10 and 11 all the way to like 14. That's an incredible amount of growth time. And so when these kids come in, like our goal in the middle school is to have them be safe and known and loved. And so I meant to start with saying compliments for Julianne because all the programming that you have done, like collegiate before Julianne came was good, like really good, and I was excited to work here. I think with her and the programming she's been able to bring, it's great because, oh, you're welcome, because she has fought for the time in the schedule and like the speakers coming in and fought for the money to make it all happen. But it's funny to use the word fight because it's not really a fight. Advocate, probably a better word, because we feel as a team very supported and valued by the administration. If you ever talk to Rob McCray, he's going to talk about wellness and this the healthiest place to grow up, and that's all the things, and that's our jam. And so if there's any, like, we need to have this at collegiate and we fight for it, administration's like, that sounds good. Okay. And we can just say this is going to make our school better and this is going to make our kids better. So I'm excited for anybody with an 8th grader to go up in that arena next year. So, but back to the muck of the middle school, it's just like so fun as well. Like, I don't want kids to come to school and think like, oh my gosh, I'm in middle school, this is the worst. It is also really, really fun. And so when it comes to social emotional learning, we have to pivot all the time and we have to be flexible all the time. So our programming is looser and it is kind of a lot of times in response to what's happening, whether it's in the world or within the school. And so we keep the fun going, and that is like every Wednesday we have a morning meeting, and that's when the entire middle school is together and we do silly games to get the kids just like excited to be here. And then also this year I started Wellness Wednesdays, where probably every other Wednesday I get up and we do like 60 seconds of like a breathing exercise or a visualization exercise. An 8th grade teacher recently said to me, like, kind of pushing back a little bit, but wellness to me might be different than wellness is to you. Like for me, wellness is church, but you haven't talked about that. So the next Wednesday, we talked about how wellness is whatever you want it to be for you. And for you, it might be running. For me, it might be Cheetos on my sofa and Better Call Saul. I didn't say that in the morning meeting, but so we kind of pivot to say, like, if the teachers give us feedback or the kids give us feedback. So that's kind of like the fun part of Wednesdays. And then the rest of the mornings, kind of like both divisions, we start an advisory. And that's where a lot of the social emotional learning comes through the advisors just connecting with the kids. As like Lisa Riker calls it, like a soft place to land every morning where you're loved and known. And also the advisory plans that John Kuhl and Lee Payne put together. Every advisor has access to them and they can choose whether or not they want to like do the greeting. Sometimes you greet each other in like Hebrew or greet each other in like with a ball toss or something like that. Or like, what are you scared of? That's what they ask, you know, in advisory. So it's like the little moments of connecting with advisors and teachers, being vulnerable, like having that social emotional learning just like, you know, sprinkled throughout. As the counselor, I implement some of my like programming through advisory because the only time I get to see the kids is for class is during their study halls. And that's tough because when you're in middle school, like you want your study hall time. And so in Veracross ahead of time, I put like, I'm coming on March 28th. I'll be there for the first half an hour of your study hall. But when I take their study hall, sometimes I can add stress, which is the opposite of what I want. So if I can't see them as much as I want during study hall, I give little tiny lessons to John Kuhl and Lee Payne, and they put them into advisory plans. And then most of the advisors do them. We've started a little bit of that. Ruler is a program that we are implementing mostly in lower school and middle school next year about regulating, understanding, labeling, recognizing and regulating your emotions. The program out of Yale that you've heard about. But we've done I've snuck a little bit of Ruler into the morning meetings, the advisory plans this year. So, let me check my notes. I wrote down other stuff that, at the beginning of the year, I had 5 S's that I told all the parents and the kids about that I was going to teach, including like sexual education and suicide prevention and social media and 5 S's. And so this month of May is like all about sexual education, which some of the kids don't know about yet, but they're about to find out. And I always communicate with parents home first. And with 8th grade, I've been doing it for months through a program called Our Whole Lives. But 5th, 6th, and 7th are about to have a month of sexuality education. But in terms of those 5 S's, some have happened really well and some haven't, because we have been responding to incidents that have happened. Some anti-Semitism in 6th grade that led me to talk to the English teacher and the global studies teacher to say, okay, you do a big lesson in 7th grade, they do a lesson on the Holocaust, a unit on the Holocaust together. But in 6th grade, they don't have it yet. And so the anti-Semitism that was happening in 6th grade, like I had to stop the social media plan that I was going to do and instead address that. And that was done, it is being done currently in like some discipline situations with the kids who were saying the Holocaust didn't exist. But more important than the discipline is the education. So getting resources also from Kayla Bradley, who's our dean, who's really into DEI. He's gonna do a lot more like that next year. Sorry, I feel like I'm just like saying all the things. I just want you to know like the way that we respond to a lot of things is just to pivot and edit. And so I didn't get to do the social media lessons that I wanted to do, which is a bummer. But we instead responded to this, and then I went in, I brought in that to 7th grade and the power of words, and then 5th grade needed it too, because 5th grade was saying some things that were extremely hurtful to a small group of kids. And so we expanded that and did a lesson on the power of words and watched a TED Talk called To This Day. And so let me just say a couple more things, and then I'll take any questions. You said, Julianne said, managing conflict in a positive way. We've had a lot of problems in 6th grade with friendship, and then all of a sudden, like in the past, like 3 weeks, it's been cancel culture in 6th grade. And people make mistakes and they aren't forgiven. And like the current 8th grade class had some of that in 6th grade and 7th grade, and they've healed from that mostly, but it took a lot of work from us the past couple years. So when we see it starting to happen in 5th grade, like the whole grade level works together to just like find programming and find a lesson, find a video that we can come in and say, this is how we do things at Collegiate. We have these 4 cornerstones that Lisa Riker always goes back to, which I appreciate. And when it comes to social emotional learning, like we're just gonna give them what they need.
It's so much.
It's like we're involved in a lot of things, as you can tell. I don't know if there's anything left you need from me.
It's so much, and we go like, I'm like, helping a crying 5th grader who like feels like he has no friends, to like an 8th grader. In the 8th grade class I just did, something about like what kids don't know. Like I had to tell them that condoms expire. And so I'm not telling that to 5th, 6th, and 7th grade, but like in 8th grade, that's the conversations I'm having. Like condoms expire, and they're like, no. I'm like, yes, that's important. So that's, yes, it's all the things.
Hey, just
Yes.
really quick, as a 6th grade parent, what I've heard is that I think that anti-Semitism might have come from TikTok videos. So I'm sure the teachers are dealing with an unreality that they don't have any control over.
And that's what's so hard. Like I postponed my social media stuff to talk about anti-Semitism, but they're connected. Everything ends up being connected to like, oh, I saw it on TikTok. So yeah, it's overwhelming. But if a plug for, we have learned a lot this year about what kids are doing, not from kids coming to tell us, which we wish they would more, but from you. And so, gosh, a lot of times a parent will call and say, you probably already know this, but, and a lot of times they don't. And I can't tell you how thankful I am when parents are like, a group of parents are talking about this, no one really wanted to call you, it's anonymous, and then they tell us something. So just a plug for, please, 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 if you think we already know something, we might not. And so just tell us. And if we already know, we'll say, thank you so much. We have dealt with that last week, but thank you for this extra information that we didn't know. Yeah.
I'm just wondering if there's a way too, I mean, if there's such an issue with anti-Semitism that, or anything, I mean, communication could go both ways, that, an email home to the 6th grade parents of, we've had some comments, if there's anything that you can do to, help us talk about this. I had no idea that, and it's a perfect opportunity for me to have a conversation about, hey, what have you heard about this?
That's a good.
Holocaust did happen, and there were.
It did happen.
You know.
Yeah.
And likewise, I mean, along those same lines, as mother of somebody who is Asian born, you know, he's certainly experienced a lot of, I don't know if you call it racism or ethnicity thing, you know, a term that I'd never heard before, coolie, you know, apparently it's something that gets called a lot. And, you know, I guess the kids read it in a book or something, and it's just sort of persisted. And, you know, how do we address that? And kind of teaching the empathy for people's backgrounds and a greater understanding of some of that.
That's good to know.
Yeah, I would agree. I think if you guys were to reach out to the parents anytime you want us, we're more than happy to provide it. We may not necessarily know that it's unsolicited is important, but certainly solicited if you feel that that's important. I'm happy to respond.
Thank you.
What I've noticed about the kids too is like most of the time they're wonderful and great. At least the upper school kids,
Yeah.
like they know better. The upper school kids probably know a little bit better. But even the kids that are like so compassionate and understanding when we're meeting in a class, sometimes, right, they just are the worst version of themselves on their phones or the worst version of themselves with their friends. And they have moments of that. And so like really having the opportunity to talk about it and be like, we all have these moments, but let's like keep the conversation about what we learned going. And that's why it's helpful to have parents involved in those conversations, teachers involved in those conversations, and not just in one place, because the more they hear it and the more they talk about it, they remember it like throughout their whole day, and not just when they're in their class talking about it.
Yeah, Ms. Holzer, and then Ms. Rowland.
Sorry, it threw me off that you called me Miss Holzer.
I did. Sorry.
No, and I think with the social media thing, I'm curious, and I don't want to hijack anything that you're going to cover it, but so my ninth grader as a fourth grader, I don't think there was a single kid in that grade who had any sort of device, right? And that was 5 years ago. And then sixth grade, I know it sounds like there's lots of problems in sixth grade, but I swear it's like the sweetest grade. And I think as a group, even the parents, we talk a lot more than I would say my other two grades do. And so if there are problems with like, you know, chat groups and all this and that, like if it escalates, you know, there is discussion among us about like, hey, somebody might want to go check and, you know, and conversations are had, and it's great. And you know, now with a fourth grader, it's mind-blowing to me that there are a solid number of kids who have devices, which I hadn't seen, and so it's like this whole new world. And for whatever reason, you know, no judgment on the parents, because obviously everyone's situation is different. But I'm curious if like the conversations are being more proactively done, at least at the school level, because I know at home, like we're struggling with a lot of like, this is why you don't have access to these chats, because when you come home from school, there's 600 unread texts. And that's something we hadn't seen till sixth grade for my middle one, and we hadn't seen till like, you know, eighth grade for my oldest. So it's all definitely like trickling down. And so I don't know if like as fourth grade parents or like younger parents, I don't know if it's happening in third and below, it's just like hitting us so quickly that we're not, like we're just running just to catch up with like our one kid. We're not necessarily having all those discussions.
So I haven't gotten to my overview yet. I will in a minute. But the differences I see now as the lower school counselor, so I work with 4-year-olds to 10-year-olds. So my topics are a little different, and I'll give you a little bit of information about what I'm doing to prime and prep our kids, hopefully, so that they can talk really openly about substances and sexuality and media and content and relationships, right? But I think the differences I'm seeing now, Lucy, is so fourth grade to me this year looks fairly similar to what fourth grade has looked in the past as far as the amount of kids that are using different kinds of devices, usually not an individual device to themselves. So a lot of times in the past, I felt like kids had like their own individual device, a phone that was their own, and now I'm seeing fourth graders that are maybe using a family computer or an iPad to do some texting. The difference I'm seeing is parents at a younger age seem much more engaged in conversations, not just monitoring, but much more engaged in conversations, really proactive and helpful conversations about what kids are seeing when there are mistakes happening in group chats or when there are inappropriate things happening. It's coming to me less because I feel like parents have been jumping in with really good open conversations with their kids, which is hopeful, and I love it. What I'm seeing in the lower grades below fourth grade is just a lot less interaction with devices. That's the shift. So I almost feel like fourth grade this year kind of looks the same as it has in the last few years, but when you go down to third, second, and first, I'm not hearing kids talk as much about interaction with technology and devices outside of what I would say are like fairly typical gaming that happens in first grade, kind of early entry use of family devices, but a lot more monitoring, a lot more parental controls. I mean, I have kids that are like, the Bark app, and they're like, I'm like, okay, I know the Bark app is one of the parental control apps. I really don't know that much about the Bark app, so tell me more about that. So I feel like parents are much more in tune and paying attention to that, to just content and what's out there. There's so much more research, right? We are just now, I feel like, kind of getting an overflow of research of how, Gary, back to your question, how technology and media is really impacting loneliness. It's really impacting a disconnection. It's really impacting kids and their relationships. And not to put everything on that, I still think our kids generally have healthy and strong relationships. Collegiate is a relational school, and so our teachers are involved in having relationships with kids. Our parents are really great about making connections with parents. I feel like we really are, that is kind of one of the things I'm most proud of, I feel like, with Collegiate, is that we are a relationship school. And the more you can, that's a huge protective factor for any of this, right? So when we're talking about kids in choices with technology, choices with sexuality, choices with interactions with substances, that protective factor of relationships, right? Having a strong core of trusted adults. So when they're little, one of the things I have on my list, when they're really little, I talk to them about, like, who are your trusted adults? Let's talk about what a trusted adult is. This is a person you can go to when you have this feeling inside that something is confusing or something doesn't feel right. So I think as a school, we are in tune with that. Our jobs are big, and our jobs can't be done alone. So we are forever grateful for the teachers we've been talking to you about that partner with us on social emotional learning through our advisory programs, through our morning meeting programs, through classes. We are extremely grateful for parents that partner with us. Our admin team is always partnering with us. We also, none of us, I mean, I will say it now, but neither of them has said anything about the fact that we also are counselors. So we do a lot of individual counseling for kids and families. None of us have talked about that. So I sit here, I mean, I'm a talker. Okay, so I'm a talker. My lower school parents know this. And I've been like sitting very quietly just listening, and I'm like, this is really amazing. I mean, we are trying really hard to put in some good, effective programming. In addition to, we want to be a strong counseling team. So in our hearts, in our training, our job is hopefully to provide emotional support when kids are going through life changes. I mean, think about, the path that we might have a kid here from JK through 12th grade, and the number of things, I mean, think about your own families, the number of things that your kids have experienced in their lives, right? Loss, trauma, family changes, things happening in our violence, cultural, COVID. I mean, right? Like, we can all sit here probably right now and think, oh my goodness, the number of things, and you can have a 5-year-old in this room and be thinking, gosh, they've had some things that they've experienced. So there's so many things, and so I think our biggest challenge always as a counseling team is to decide what are the most important. Just a little bit about my programming, and I think I've had a lot of you, if you are middle and upper school parents, and then if you're a lower school parent, you've probably heard me talk about my program, but I'm in every classroom from age 4 to 10, and I get monthly time. My teachers are wonderful, and I schedule time, monthly time with JK through 2nd grade, and then twice a month I do lessons with 3rd and 4th grade. And my content really is foundational. So my content is a little less specific. I'm not maybe doing substance prevention as a content area. I'm doing things like working through conflict, identifying feelings. What is a feeling? Expanding vocabularies around feeling words. Learning how to effectively communicate when you're having a feeling or a problem. Navigating just social skills, right? Basic social skills when kids are little. I've been doing a lot more mindfulness kinds of things with the lower school. I feel like upped my game a little bit with just mental health. health, talking to kids openly about mental health. I had a really amazing lesson with one of the 4th grade groups last month. My goal was to just talk about what is mental health. I literally asked them that question. I was like, what does mental health mean? And we were able to talk about like physical health, mental health. All of a sudden, we were just talking, I had a little video and we're talking about mental health, and I had so many kids just share about times that they had kind of had to go to talk to somebody about a feeling, whether it was a therapist or a parent, just openly, and it was like super normalized, and I was able to really make that normalized for them. So my biggest goal is that they're leaving lower school and they have some sort of foundation on which to build and to go into some of these kind of scarier, not scarier, I hate to say scary, middle and high school, but just trickier relationship challenges, trickier schedules, academic, the academic rigor, it works at a pace here that just gets harder. So that's a little bit about sort of my topic and I guess a little bit to your question. And then I got my overview. Lucy, I don't know if I answered that, but I do think there's some trending and some changes. And I've had like many 1st grade parents recently tell me that they're trying to get sort of a group together to hopefully hold off and delay, much like I think the brain research shows that if you can kind of delay substances to the age past 15, you're helping kids not be habitual users. And it's a little bit similar with technology, right? It's a little bit of putting a pause and a delay, or just sort of helping them hold off a little bit longer and having all of that at their fingertips. Not none, but just interacting with it in a healthy way. Did you have a question?
Well, yeah, and I want to, this is sort of piggybacking off of what Lucy said in terms of challenges presenting at a much younger age. Well, Kate, I appreciate the fact that you want to bring fun into your lessons, and when you use the word pivot, it kind of tells me that it's more of a reactive situation. That's just concerning to me because the challenges that these kids are seeing now are showing up a lot earlier. 20 years ago, we didn't have the same rate of suicide attempts in middle school. Self-harm is all over. I haven't heard that mentioned at all. So my concern in a reactive approach is, reacting to something that is suicidal ideation. It's a little bit more problematic than reacting to something that maybe was more developmentally appropriate for 7th graders or middle schoolers, 20 years ago. And so I'm just, I'm really truly wondering if maybe this role is too much for one person. I mean, I feel like you guys need some help. Not because you're not doing your jobs well, but because it's too much for one person to do across all 3 divisions.
And we have, I don't know, you can take this question too. I
can talk about Josh.
Oh, okay. I feel like we have a team as far as team, when I think about something like some of the curriculum we're putting in, like Ruler, Kate mentioned Ruler, and I didn't mention that yet, but we're working, we are adopting a curriculum through Yale that's called Ruler, and that is something that we are training the teachers to be able to use those in the classroom. So it's a combination, I think, like we always have to be a little bit reactive, right? Because we don't know what things are going to come up with kids or in our culture or in society. But as far as proactive, systemic, putting things into place, I feel like we have a ton of support right now from the admin team. We have grants that we're working on. We are training teachers, I think continuing to train teachers to be able to tuck some of these things into. Now, do they need to be necessarily trained to help when a student is having suicidal ideation? It would probably always come to us, but QPR, for instance, which is something we had never done before. This is the first year we've done that. This is a training for all teachers, a baseline training about suicide intervention, awareness, and prevention. And so everybody was mandated to go through that. And so that's a huge step in the sense that I feel like you have a little bit of support before it would get to us, if that makes sense.
It does. I'm just also wondering, it's like...
But yes, it's a big job. I'm not at all saying that we don't feel like we have full plates.
I'm trying to get you.
Yes, yeah.
So, because when you say the teachers are trained, that's great. I love that. I think the more education, the more people that know how to can.
Yeah.
But teachers have jobs too.
Of course.
They're not,
they have heavy content.
Big jobs.
Yeah,
So I'm just wondering if there's any conversations going on at an administrative level of like, hey, I can't have one-on-ones with these students and mitigate suicidal ideation and talk to these friend groups and deal with anti-Semitism. Like, that's a lot.
I know you want to talk about the Spalding.
Yeah, I'm happy to weigh in as the admin perspective. The answer to that is yes, of course. There's always those conversations that are taking place internally at the admin level. And then also, I mean, was it just a few weeks ago, sitting down with Kate, Julianne, and Bridget, and really kind of getting the state of the counseling work that they're engaged in too, so that we can stay, Rob and I sat down with them to really say, all right, let's go through everything that you're kind of seeing, help us understand it. I think you're right in that, like, it's getting more and more complex to think about how it is, you know, what schools need to do and what role do they need to play to help raise kids. And raising kids and raising human beings is really difficult and challenging. And so I think what we'll probably see is that we'll need to think creatively about what kind of resources we put in place and how we, you know, manage different human resources and financial resources to meet the needs of our kids. It's critically important to all of us here. I mean, we spend a ton of time discussing this and really thinking about how do we do it better. Rob's vision isn't one that's just, it's not words. You know, to be the healthiest place for kids to grow up is going to take a lot of hard work, but we're going to have to really think differently about how schools do it. And so we're deeply engaged in that work, and yes, I couldn't agree more. We're going to have to like think differently because, you know, kids who were dealing with stuff 20 years ago or 30 years ago or 40 years ago is entirely different nowadays than it was then.
Yeah.
It's totally different than what I went through, you know, so we do need to think kind of critically and differently about our programming, our human resources, you know, how we're training up our teachers, what kind of training, the training that teachers need today is completely different than the teachers needed 20 or 30 years ago. I mean, even just things around like school safety and stuff like that are completely different. So,
I mean, I just
couldn't agree more.
concerned that we're setting them up to fail by not giving them what
Well, yeah, we're not, that is not our intention.
No, I'm not. I no means I think it is. I'm just saying.
Right.
It's a really big, I mean, again, I think what Kate has to do from grade 5 to grade 8. You know, I have two fifth graders, and I have a 7th grader, and I mean, they may as well be living on different planets in terms of what they need. And I'm worried that that's
counselors
not.
are great, and those are massive responsibilities in their positions, there's no question.
One thing that has been nice this year is having a doctoral candidate, Josh Jones, here in the middle school with me. And so in addition to I talked about pivoting and reacting a lot, but that's in addition to the programming that I promise is like steady, you know, and consistent. One of the things that the 7th grade team noticed at the beginning of the year is like the 7th grade class seems to have seems like a third of the kids are really loud. And a third of the kids are just kind of not, and a third of the kids seem to be really reluctant to speak up in class. And so Ms. Waitman is like, we need assertiveness. That's what this grade needs. And so Josh Jones, the intern, has developed a program that each 7th grader by the end of the school year is going to have either 2 or 3 lessons on assertiveness. And so he's been my partner. He's actually going to teach the puberty lesson to the 5th grader boys on Thursday. I'll do the girls. And so that's the kind of support that I think the school recognized that we needed this year. And so that's been a really nice thing. And Josh has been there to handle a 5th grader coming in and crying. He's like an expert in anxiety. And so that's
Introduced to, because when we got that email, it was the first time anyone had heard his name. So I don't know.
We sent out emails in the beginning of the year,
I mean,
Yeah.
it was news to me, it was news to.
We partnered with Spalding, and there was some communication, I think.
It was news to all my kids, that there was another counselor, you know.
Well, he's been, like Sawyer and Guthrie have both met him in class. Mia has seen him. So everybody's seen him, and then we communicated at the beginning of the year through, I don't know if there's e-news or an email.
Okay,
Yeah.
But it's
A lot of-
not been.
Yeah, it's been a big year.
They're level counseling site candidates, and so they already have their master's in counseling. And so it was a great program for us to work with Spalding on because they have they place interns in various settings, schools all over, and so we got engaged with that program, and it's been great to just have some additional counseling resources on site with both Maggie and
Bless you.
And they've also been able to help out a little bit with some testing and stuff like that too, which has been good. Yeah.
Gary, did you have a question?
I had more comment. I just, and I'll be short, but I'll be direct, and those of you who know me, I'm not afraid to say it. I want to applaud the school because just as you said, I mean, they're trying to do a lot, and I think part of it, and I lead the Big Brothers Big Sisters organization in this community, which is a national organization. It's a lot. This is not a collegiate thing. This is a kids everywhere thing. Part of the challenge is that it starts with the families, you know, and a lot of the families are putting it on the schools. And it can't, that's part of the problem, is that the parents are getting older families, they may not have parents, are saying, well, why is school doing this or this? It's gotta be a village, it's gotta be everybody working together, and it's gotta start at home. And the thing I'll say about the phones, and we're all guilty of this, I know they still sell flip phones. They do.
They
So
do.
a family has a choice of what phone to buy their child. And we all choose to buy these. Okay? There's no social media on flip phones. So it starts with wherever they're growing up, whatever school you're at. So the fact that they're even addressing it and the fact that they're trying to put more resources towards it is huge. It's huge. But there's so much pointing fingers in this world, in this community, that if we don't take accountability, if we don't look in the mirror as families and say, well, how can we be more connected with the issues that are going on, and not have all the answers, but try to understand and work with other families and say, hey, how are you working with this? That's where it's got to start. Should be just an accident. Anything they're doing in the school, I mean, when we all growing up, this wasn't even topics.
It's true.
People still have mental health issues.
Yeah.
But it wasn't
I think
topics.
you're making an assumption though that it's not families aren't trying to, that are not trying to, are not involved and you know, they have kids 40 hours a week. So I think they're a big part of what, you know, it's not ancillary here.
Yeah, I'm not making any assumptions. I'm just saying it has
Takes a
to
team.
start there. If it does, then that's great. If it doesn't, again, is everybody accountable to themselves and their families? And I'm not, you know, and it's okay for folks to disagree. That's okay too.
We're so thankful you're all here today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know we're running short on time. I'm glad you guys have gone through PPR. I was just going to put a plug in. One of the organizations and things, the local NAMI group, NAMI Louisville, does offer PPR training, and it's a good thing for parents to go
Yeah.
as well. So, you know, maybe even the school would like to sponsor a PPR night or something.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good suggestion. We're trained to train whatever group. Yep. Yep. Good.
Yeah, we're excited that we got everybody. Sorry, no, I was just gonna say,
To be honest, I mean, you don't have to comment back, but I think for upper school, the kids rotate through SEL training, like during their life fitness and LFW period. So I don't know for middle school if you're kind of short on time with them and if you're adding stress during their study halls, if pulling out a subject during PE makes sense, but that's, you guys figure that out. But the other thing is, it sounds like maybe like alcohol and drug abuse kind of stuff is, kind of trending down. I don't know if there are other things that are kind of spiking in our community, and
I can tell you what I heard from the counselor.
Sure.
Eating disorders amongst girls as young as 11 and 12. And, comments like, well, what if my friend doesn't eat, etc. And something I mentioned to her was like, might have a look at some of the moms too, because when I walk through pickup, if I come on foot and not in my car, and say, well, examples of, to your point, might start at home too. But that was the one big one she mentioned happening a lot in middle school.
And I think there's like so many topics you guys cover, and then you do send communication to them, and then like I know in our house we try to like cover it all, and again it's so much. We're only trying to do it for 3 kids, and you guys are doing it for hundreds. So I don't know if like by division or by grade or something, as you do your communications, like you want to say like, hey, 6th grade, you might want to just focus in on like if you're having conversations at home. It's cultural things and it's something, like just to kind of narrow our conversations too, because we too, I mean, it's like one night we're talking about sex, one night we're talking about like social media. I'm just like, my head's exploding. But, because then we can kind of be part of the whole.
And as this is coming from a mom of a 5th and 7th grader, like it is really challenging, but like Kate will tell me what's going on and I'm like, that's not what's going on for my 7th grader, right? So it's like you have to, and like something else is going on for my 7th grader, right? So it's like really, like my kid will have no idea, you know, and like, okay, Kate said this was like a big thing this week. My kid had no idea. So like, yeah, it's really trying to like navigate what your kid is connecting with and trying to figure that out. It's like trying to figure out that balance. But yeah, I think the more that we all communicate with each other, I think the better. And I would say that's my biggest challenge in the upper school is being able to like navigate all this stuff, but also like communicating with parents as well in the day. So that's
Okay,
hard.
as a bit of the timekeeper, we're going to wrap up. What you should expect from us is we did a little survey and have some resources that we will just send out to all the parents, and we'll just add some things in there, talking points, resources that we think are helpful, pertinent information for right now. And obviously, if you have individual questions for us, we can stick around for a couple minutes. And yeah.
And the things on your table, I forgot to mention the pink and green cards. This is, it was just an example of what we're trying to do in the middle school. Like when the 7th graders were having some problems earlier this year, we gave them assigned seats at lunch, which they were cranky about. And so I made these just to put on their tables and rotated them so that they would at least have something to talk about. Or if they're cranky, they can at least be like, Miss Evelyn is such a dork. She gave us these stupid cards, and then they start talking about them. So that's what those are. We are grateful so much.
Thank you so much for coming.
For
We're
coming.
appreciative. Everybody